Good morning. Welcome to the last chapel of the 2014-2015 school year. As we begin, I need to do three things. I need to, first of all, give a word of welcome, and then a word of announcement, and then a word of thanks. First of all, a word of welcome. Would you join me in welcoming our Thursday tour guests here today? We are very glad you are here. Very glad. That's the word of welcome. Now, a word of announcement. A word of announcement. You should have received an email that outlined for you a new payment plan that we are implementing here at Ozark. This is actually going to serve you. It's going to put us in line with other colleges and kind of best practices for payment plan. But my hunch is that many of you did not read that email. I've talked with a few that do not know about this new payment plan. Now, leadership lesson here today. There is a communication dictum that says this: 6 till it sticks. You have to say something 6 times for it to stick with people. You will think you are repeating yourself painfully, but only about the 5th or 6th time will it finally dawn on people. Oh, so you're saying there's a new payment plan. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And so you've had an email. You have now had this announcement. Now I would like for you, for our third of these 6 times, I would like for you on the count of 3 to say, we have a new payment plan at Ozark. On the count of 3, you will say that. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Very good. That's 3. Now turn to your neighbor and say, we have a new payment plan at Ozark. Very good. Now, raise your right hand. Raise your right hand. Okay? Right after chapel today, you are going to get another email telling you about this payment plan at Ozark. I want you to repeat after me. We have a new payment plan. And I will read the email carefully. Very good. That is now 5. When you read that email, that will be 6. It should stick. It is important because your payment will be due before you arrive next fall. Read it carefully. That's my word of announcement. Finally, a word of thanks. A word of thanks. Now, when Damian Spickerite graduated from Ozark Christian College, he actually started taking classes at Lincoln Christian Seminary, and in one of his exegetical classes, he turned in his major paper that he had written along with the rest of the class, and a few days later, as the class was preparing to discuss their papers, the professor, longtime respected, beloved New Testament professor there at Lincoln Seminary, Dr. Robert Lowry, who did not know Damian previously, he said, Damian, you're a new student here. He said, I'm guessing you're from Ozark Christian College, aren't you? Now, Damian hadn't really even had a conversation with Dr. Lowry, and so he was a bit surprised, but he said, yes. Wasn't sure how he knew. Dr. Lowry said, when I read your paper, I could tell. I can always tell an Ozark student by their word studies. And Damian said, thank Kenny Boles. Now, our chapel preacher today is Kenny Boles, and since he is retiring after 45 years here at Ozark, I asked him about being a part of the Honor Chapel on Tuesday, and he specifically asked not to be a part of the Honor Chapel. He said he did not want a big deal made over his departure. In fact, if we tried to pull off some kind of big hoo-ha, he said he would walk out. And so I appreciate his desire there. And I said, okay, if we can't have a big send-off for you, then how about if you send us off? Will you preach the last chapel of the year? Send us out for the summer. And he said, yes, he would be willing to do that, for which I'm very grateful, and that's what he's going to do today. And so this morning, we are not going to honor Kenny Boles. However, I do want to honor his wife, Linda, who is here with us today. Now, this year, Kenny and Linda, are celebrating 50 years of marriage. And you bet. And they have two kids, both of whom attended here. Leanne, their daughter, married Jeff Johnson, also an Ozark grad. They're in a ministry out in Indiana. Their son, Eric, attended here, and he's married to Allison. They live up in the Kansas City area, active members there at the Legacy Christian Church. Kenny and Linda have three grandkids. By the way, they also have some very special guests with them today. Kenny's mother, Mrs. Boles, and Linda's father, Mr. Boatman, are here. Would you welcome them today also? Now, I really do, I'm honest, I do want to honor Linda because she also has been a part of this college family for 45 years, and that is no small thing. She taught here in years past. She taught a class called Christian Womanhood. She herself is an accomplished seamstress. She worked in the costuming department at Missouri Southern for many years, was a light and a witness for Christ over in that community. And she has served alongside Kenny, both here at the college and in all their volunteer ministries, in churches, in ministries like Life Choices here in town. She herself is a cancer survivor. And I know that when my wife, Katie, was diagnosed with cancer about 2 years ago, she was a great encouragement to Katie. And so I do want to honor Linda this morning. Most of all, I want to honor her for putting up with Kenny. Because let's just be honest here today, that can't have been easy. The man is a troublemaker. Back in the 1970s, long hair and beards and sideburns were a countercultural statement. They were a statement of rebellion. Seth Wilson, one time in a faculty meeting back then, said he wished that this young professor named Kenny Boles would cut his sideburns. He has always been a rebel. On Mark Moore's 30th birthday, when Mark was teaching here, Kenny dressed up in a chicken suit, went into Mark's class while he was teaching, put 30 live baby chickens on the floor, said happy birthday, and left, all right? The man is a troublemaker, and it cannot have been easy for Linda all of these years, and so we want to honor her today. We you know what? She also, for the past 45 years, she has had to put up with hearing about what a great teacher he was. Oh, always graded his assignments so fast. You know, he's just so clear as he teaches through Bible books. You know, Galatians, Ephesians, Hebrews, John. You know, oh, he makes Greek so fun, you know. And always hearing about how he helped people read their Bibles better, how students would sign up for Greek 3 just so they could go Christmas caroling with Kenny in funny costumes. And you know, I mean, the man has had over 8,000 students, in literally half the faculty, most of the administrators, and I am sure all of them saying how much he changed their life. I'm sick of hearing it. I'm sure she had to be sick of hearing it. And so we need to honor her today. And of course, this is not even to mention all of Kenny's other ministries that she had to put up with him, you know, traveling to preach to churches. Always, you know, churches requesting he'd preach his famous series on heaven that blessed so many people. I mean, she had to put it always off preaching and literally hundreds of weeks of camp over the years, serving as interim minister at this church and that church, many churches that were going through difficult times. He would help them heal. He was always off writing. He wrote 7 books and writes the most popular column in our quarterly magazine here at the school, the little column on New Testament words. He writing for the Christian Standard quarterly Sunday school lesson material that's used to teach thousands of people every week in Sunday schools across the country, teach the Bible. And she's had to share him so much so that he could, you know, bless tens of thousands of people every week for Christ. And I'm sure it wasn't easy being Mrs. Kenny Boles. And so I want to honor her this morning. And in just a moment, I'm going to ask her to come to stage, and I will ask Kenny to join her so that he can help us in honoring her. But before I do, I want to say one more thing. This is, of course, being videoed here today, and I'm confident that Kenny's 3 grandkids at some point will get to see this video. And so I want to say this to his grandkids. Your grandpa has helped a lot of people know the Bible better and know Jesus better. And I know you love him, and you should be proud of him. Thank you, Kenny. Linda, if you would come on up. Kenny, you come help us honor her. And you express your appreciation to Linda. Now, Linda, this is a nice plaque that you can hang on your wall. And in gratitude to Kenny Boles, it says, in gratitude for your 45 years of service as professor of Greek and New Testament at Ozark Christian College, your commitment to correctly handling the word of truth, equipping students to read God's word carefully, teaching and preaching with clarity and conviction, and your example of faithful Christ-centered ministry are greatly appreciated. Thank you for training generations of men and women for Christian service. Matthew 25:21. Well done, good and faithful servant. Linda, thanks for putting up with him all these years. It wasn't that hard. Very good. Would you join me expressing your appreciation one more time?
I am so glad to be here today because I've always wanted to do one of those. And I am so glad that my mom can be with us today. Her husband, Paul Boles, was a trustee of this school for 22 years. And my father-in-law, John Boatman, whose brother, Don Earl, was the president of this school for nearly 30 years, 28 or so. And my good wife that you've already met, and for the effort that she has made to get them in the wheelchairs and all of that here today. Glad to make that happen. I'm glad. I'm glad that my Thursday night home study Bible group is here. Where are you guys sitting? Can I see some hands? Over there. Okay. We're glad for you, those that could come. So 52 years ago, I left high school and came to what was called Ozark Bible College on this campus. It was here for the first time that year. These were the verses that brought me here. I wonder, what were the verses that brought you here? The wisdom of God, of men, is foolishness with God. That's why I chose this place instead of some university studying something else, which would have been fine, but compared to knowing God and his wisdom. To whom much is given, much will be required. Luke 12. Scripture cannot be broken. John 10. The gospel is the power of God for salvation. Not me, not you, not anything we do so much. It's just as we bring the gospel into people's lives. And faith without works is dead. As I think back, those were verses that brought me here. These are verses that I learned to love while I was here. I can hear Seth Wilson getting red in the face on this one yet today. How can you believe if you accept praise from each other and yet make no effort to obtain the praise that comes from God? He is able to do abundantly more than all we could ask or imagine by the power at work within us. Be faithful unto death, and you will receive the crown of life. For by grace you are saved through faith. And this is not of yourselves. It is a gift of God, not of men, lest anyone would boast. And as the Father has sent me, so send I you. That verse from John 20 has meant a lot to me over the years. That's what brought us here. But I want to talk about them for a minute, not us. We're here. They were there, locked in an upper room, scared to death. They were scared to death because the Jews had learned they could flex their muscle. What are you laughing at? They could flex their muscle and get people killed. And these guys, locked in the upper room, scared to death, knew that if the Jews didn't kill them, the Romans would. And they're terrified. And then suddenly, they don't need to be scared anymore because here's Jesus and he's standing in their midst and they can see him and they can hear him and they can reach out and touch him. Jesus is here and we don't need to be scared anymore. And Jesus says, peace be unto you. And he says, as the Father has sent me, I am sending you. And now they're really scared. I want you to think about it. They're really scared. They're fishermen. They're flawed men. They're failure men. A tax collector. A zealot troublemaker. And Jesus is going to send them as the Father has sent him, and that gets a little bit scary. But that's what we're here to talk about today. Send-off. Because that statement that Jesus made to the apostles has an unbroken chain. He commanded them to take what he has told them and to tell it to other people and make them observe it. And as Paul said, teach others who will be able to teach others also. And so we have this unbroken chain coming down to us. Jesus sent the apostles, they sent their disciples sent their disciples, and we are sent just as Jesus was sent, and that gets a little scary. Jesus was sent from the comfort and security of heaven to a woman's womb. That's scary. He was sent from the security and warmth of a mother's womb into a world that would hate him. That's scary. He was sent from the comfort of a secure little village called Nazareth into public ministry. And that's scary. It's dangerous sometimes to be sent. Let me tell you a true story. This goes back a ways, generations ago. It's the origin of the motto of the U.S. Coast Guard. But here's the story. It was on the Diamond Shoals, that's a low place where there are rocks off the shore, at Cape Hatteras. And the life-saving crew, this is the kind of where the Coast Guard all gets started in American history. The life-saving crew was led by a man by the name of Patrick Etheridge. And a man came running into him and said, there's a ship on the shoals. It's breaking up. Now that's dangerous because everybody's going to die. And Patrick Etheridge calls for the lifeboat to come out. He calls for the men, get in the boat, we're going out. And one of the men says, we may get out there, but we'll never get back. And Patrick Etheridge said, if I may quote, now remember he's a little salty. He's a sailor. He's an old skipper. But he looked around and he said this, the Blue Book says, not the good book, but the Blue Book, the manual that tells them what they're supposed to do. The Blue Book says we've got to go out, and it doesn't say a damn thing about having to come back. I'm here to tell you, it can be dangerous to be sent out. It can be dangerous to hear Jesus say, as the Father has sent me, now I am sending you. We, the faculty, are sending you into a world of darkness, just like Jesus. We are sending you to be tempted by the devil, just like Jesus. We're sending you to hang out with cripples and blind people and poor folks, just like Jesus. And somehow we expect you to be a blessing to them. We do not expect you to heal in the way that Jesus did, but we do expect you to bring God's blessing into their lives if you are sent as Jesus was sent. We're sending you to hang out with sinners, not because you prefer that kind of people, but because you want to save that kind of people. Not because you want to show them how much like them you are, but you want to show them how much like God they can become. As the Father has sent me, Jesus said, I am sending you. And so, in the name of Jesus, we are sending you. And if you are going to be sent as Jesus was sent, then maybe you ought to know how Jesus was sent. And maybe it would be a good thing if we would walk through the life of Jesus in the Gospel of John, just to kind of watch and remember each time, as he was sent, so are we. Chapter 1. Jesus was sent as light into darkness. Jesus was the light. And there was darkness, and the men loved the darkness rather than the light because their deeds were evil. But we are sending you to be the light set on a lampstand, and you can't hide it. Jesus was sent to people just like him, and we're sending you to people just like you, and some of them will reject you for no good reason. Jesus was sent to call disciples, one at a time. Now, there's always somebody who's got a grand plan for some wholesale shortcut, and we won't have to worry about winning people one at a time. We can win them by the hundreds at a time, and it won't be so much work. But I'll tell you what, real disciples are always one at a time, face to face, and we're sending you just like Jesus was sent. John chapter 2. John 2. We are sending you to participate in the everyday social events of the neighborhood. Hey, you get to be the party guy. And in the same chapter, we are sending you to make trouble at the temple. Now, that's kind of scary in a way, because once in a while we have students who go out from this school and they cause all kind of havoc. Be careful. Be careful that you are doing God's will and speaking God's word. But listen, you cannot speak for God forever without stirring up a little bit of dust. And Jesus had to cleanse a temple. As the Father sent me, so send I you. John chapter 3. We are sending you to talk late at night sometimes with someone who needs to know about being born again. And maybe you will not have any noticeable immediate results, but maybe you can plant a seed like Nicodemus. John 4. If you are being sent as Jesus was sent, then you are sent to go talk to social outcasts. Or are you too good for that? Jesus was not ashamed to be caught talking to this woman at the well. Hey, aren't you kind of wasting your time here with this person of little consequence? Shouldn't you be doing something more significant, Jesus? But I want you to remember that woman opened a door so that Jesus could say, the fields are white unto harvest. It's ripe, it's ready. Whenever God opens a door for you, you go through that door. And when God leads you into someone's path where you can talk about the gospel, you talk to that person, and you have no idea what may open up. When you are sent as Jesus was sent, John chapter 5, we are sending you to care about cripples. The church has not been particularly great about caring for cripples. The government made the first step about requiring to build your building so cripples can get in, for goodness sakes. The government was ahead of the church there. Does the church care about people with special needs? I know you can't heal the way Peter and John did, but let me tell you something I learned from Johnny Erickson Tata. God shows his power in situations of weakness. And you know where she learned it? From the Apostle Paul. My strength is made perfect in weakness, God said. And if you are being sent as Jesus was sent, don't you ignore that cripple over there. Do something to bring God's blessing into his life. The thing that immediately follows in John chapter 5 about this cripple thing is that everybody's mad at Jesus. And he preaches a sermon that gets people really upset. I guess it's a fault that we get used to preaching sermons in such a way that everybody on the way out says, good sermon, good sermon, good sermon. Sure appreciated that, brother. Good sermon, yes, I know. Good sermon, good sermon. We're sending you to face big shots, powerful people, without flinching. When you represent Jesus, you don't have to apologize to anybody. Could I say that again? When you represent Jesus, you don't have to apologize for who you are as a Christian. You represent the King. John chapter 6. If you're sent anything like Jesus was sent, sometimes you'll just want to get away. And then in the process of getting away, you find out you can't get away. And he ended up that day speaking to a crowd of thousands of people. And if you're sent like Jesus was sent, sometimes you will preach your heart out, telling people the truth of God's word and God's message and what has to be done, and they'll all get up and walk away. John 6:66. If you hit a low point in your ministry, you remember this point in Jesus' ministry, when from that point, many of his disciples went away and followed him no longer. John chapter 7. Maybe, if you're like Jesus, you'll be misunderstood by your family. Maybe your family won't believe what you believe. Jesus' own brothers did not believe in him. But John chapter 7, Jesus did find people who were thirsty, and he did offer them the water of life. John chapter 8. You are sent. We are sending you again to bring light into the world as Jesus did. We are sending you to bring the truth that makes men free. It is not your winsomeness. It is not your friendship. It is not your charm or anything about you that will save people. Maybe friendship can be a way to open a door, a first step toward getting someone to listen, but it is the truth that sets men free, and Jesus is that truth, and don't you ever forget it. John chapter 9. Jesus was sent to make blind people see, and to make people who thought they could see blind. John chapter 10. If you were sent as Jesus was sent, maybe you'll find yourself as a pastor shepherd of a bunch of stupid sheep. Sheep can be so dumb. And maybe you will spend your life Jesus said a good shepherd will give his life for his flock. Maybe you will spend your whole life trying to shepherd a bunch of stupid sheep, and maybe it's not even that big a flock, and maybe it's not that well paid or appreciative, but a good shepherd gives his life for the flock. John chapter 11. Oh, by the way, did you know how much people looked down on shepherds in the first century? They were really, really looked down on in society, but God has never looked down on a shepherd. Pastor. Same word. John 11. Some of you are being sent to be too far away for the funeral of your good friend. You show up 4 days late, as soon as you could get there, to weep at the funeral. John chapter 12. You may think, especially those of you who are graduating and ready to go out, you may think that this is going to be your triumphal entry into ministry. Boom, here I am, world. And then wonder just a few days later, where's all the hosannas? Where's all the happiness? Where's all the praise? We are sending you, as Jesus was sent, to wash dirty feet. John 13. You are not so good that you cannot humble yourself and do lowly, disgusting, and dirty things. You're no better than Jesus. We are sending you to do this beautiful act of love and humility and humble yourself and serve people, and then have one of your own turn on you and betray you. That's what immediately follows the foot washing. Jesus, like a slave down there washing feet. Here, Judas, let me wash your feet. Within minutes, Judas is up and out into the night to betray him. John chapter 14. We are sending you to prepare people to go to heaven and to prepare people's hearts so heaven can come and live in them. You are sent to live in such a way. This is John 14:9, and I'm worried about this one a little bit because how can we be like Jesus when he said, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. But you know, the more I thought about them, I think that's a little bit true, at least in every one of us. Because when people see us, they ought to see at least a glimpse of what God is like. John chapter 15, we're sending you to be a branch, not a vine. It's not all about you. It's about Jesus. You're the branch. He's the vine. And we're sending you to bear much fruit. As I look back over decades of graduates who have gone out, decades of students who have gone out into summer service all over the world, it is amazing to me how much fruit has been born for the kingdom. John chapter 16. We are sending you out to prepare people who will take over when you're done. That's part of what Jesus was doing here, preparing the people who would take over when he's gone. John chapter 17. As much as anything, we are sending you to pray. The whole chapter. John chapter 18. We are sending you, some of you, to speak before judges and governors and important people. But we're also sending you out to suffer. What? Are you better than Jesus? John chapter 19, now it gets really serious. We may be sending some of you to die in a place far from home. At least 2 of my classmates died on the mission field at a young age. And I don't know, I don't guess I could say that you're going to be crucified or something. But Jesus did say that if anyone would follow me, he must take up his cross and follow me. John chapter 20. We are sending you to startle sleepy-headed women on a Sunday morning. That sounds like fun. It may not be quite as exciting as it was at an empty tomb, but that's what Jesus did, and that's what you can do. And you can show what God's surpassingly great resurrection power that Paul spoke of in Ephesians. Show how much this resurrection power can accomplish. The same power that raised Jesus from the dead is at work in us who believe. Ephesians 1. Chapter 21, you were thinking we would never get there, but here we are already, the final chapter of John. 7 apostles are gathered beside the Sea of Galilee. It's breakfast. And Jesus, just a few verses earlier in chapter 20, has said, "So send I you." And now he says, "Follow me." No, isn't that a little bit odd? A little bit awkward. I'm sending you. Here, follow me. How can he send us and at the same time we're following? I guess maybe it's because he who sends you is with you always. He who sends you as you leave this campus, as you go to homes where people may not honor Christ, as you go to countries where people may oppose you, as you go to churches and schools and wherever you are going to be going, it's hundreds of different places, wherever you go, never forget, he is with you. To the end of the summer, to the end of your years at Ozark, to the end of your life, to the end of the age, he is with you. And as the Father sent Jesus, and as Jesus sent his disciples, and as each generation in succession has been sent out to do God's will and to bring him glory, students and graduates of Ozark Christian College, so send we you. And you are not dismissed, you are sent.